So I want to start off by saying welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. If you're a fanatic of everything entertainment, then this is the channel for you. But in today's movie review, we'll be talking about this year's Beetlejuice. So let's get into it. To say I was excited for this movie coming out is an understatement. While I'm not the biggest fan of the first film, I do have a soft spot for it because it's one of my mom's favorite movies of all time. And even I give it like an 8 out of 10. It's still a pretty good movie. But yeah, I was excited for this movie, and I was rooting for this movie ever since I heard that it was coming out. Then again, I heard it was coming out like 9-10 years ago, so I didn't know what to believe. But, until I saw the first images come out and, the trailer, then I was really amped for it. That's why I even got this poster of Beetlejuice. Sorry, you can't really see that because of ring light. But yeah, it's got Beetlejuice, Winona Ryder, and Jenna Ortega on there. And then even my wife got a little bit into the action because last night when we saw the movie, we went to Regal and she got this popcorn bucket slash cup, which has a sandworm on it, but it talked about Beetlejuice on there, so I thought that was pretty cool. But she noticed this and she was like, I have to get it, which is the handbook for the recently deceased, this is a popcorn bucket, but you can basically put anything you want in it.
Wow, that's cool. What do you do with it?
You put your weed in there.
Pretty cool. I really like that. Which this might go somewhere back here. I'm not entirely sure yet. Let me know if you guys want to see that. But yeah, like I said, I've been rooting for this movie since day one, and I don't know, man. I've seen, a lot of positive things going into this movie, and I was really amped. And to say I walked out disappointed was a bit of an understatement. So let's get into the things I did like about this movie. Once again, Michael Keaton brings his A game as Beetlejuice. I think he has a little bit more screen time in this one, but if it's the same, they utilize it very well because he shows up like every 10 to 15 minutes, which is a nice touch. And he hasn't lost a beat. Like I said, he's one of the best parts about this movie. And he hasn't missed a beat. He's in his 70s too. Like, this performance wouldn't have worked if he put in like 10% or if he half-assed it. But no, he brought his A game. Like I said, one of the best parts of this movie. Which the legacy characters in here are really cool as well. You have Winona Ryder returning and Catherine O'Hara returning. Catherine O'Hara has some of the funniest moments in here. Her quippy one-liners are great. And her relationship between her and Winona Ryder's character, it's a lot better than it was in the first movie. And they have a moment to bond in here, which I thought was really nice. So, like, the legacy characters in here were great. I'll get into some other things later on, but also the set design in here, I think this is like Tim Burton's best looking movie, or at least his best looking modern film. I haven't watched a modern Tim Burton film since Frankenweenie or Dark Shadows, one of the two. I didn't really care to watch Dumbo. Actually, he did direct Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I think that was pretty good. So, it's been a while since we've seen Tim Burton on film. And we've seen his movies, but I haven't heard the best things about Dumbo. But his set design in here, I think, looked fantastic. I don't do it nearly as well. I have my green light right here and the purple light right here to symbolize Beetlejuice, and that's about it. This is like 1% of what he does. Fantastic in here. I love the way that this movie looked. Also, the practical effects in here, you can never go wrong with practical effects, but practical effects in a modern film, I think that is fantastic. Yes, there is a little bit of CGI, which you sort of have to in today's day and age to clean certain things up and whatever. And a lot of those scenes were noticeable, but to see the sandworms return and some of the, those the sequence in the first 10-15 minutes I thought looked really great, involving a certain character that passed away in here. I thought that was really well done. I do like the addition of new characters, especially Beetlejuice's ex-wife and then Willem Dafoe's character, which I'll get into that later. But with that being said, let's move on to the things that I mixed on with this film. Like I just brought up, Beetlejuice's ex-wife in here and Willem Dafoe's character, I think they were great in here. I just think they were very underutilized in here, which, to be fair, this movie just felt very scattered because there was just a lot going on. There's like 4 or 5 different subplots going on at the same time, which I think they could have just focused it down to 1 or 2, one main plot, maybe one side plot, and that's it. But no, there's like 4 or 5 in here, which I think was unnecessary. I wasn't a fan of that at all, but some of them do pay off. That's why they're in the mix section, but some of them don't at the same time. Another thing that I mixed on is the comedy in here. For the most part, it does hit, but there's a lot of cringe in here, which I hate to say that word because there is some cringe in the first as well, but a lot of the humor involving like the newer characters just didn't really work for me. For every joke that I loved, there was one that I absolutely didn't. There's one involving a baby, which I thought was hilarious, and even my wife turned to me whenever that scene happened, and I was laughing my ass off. There's just as much that I just don't like when it comes to the humor department in here, which isn't always Tim Burton's strong suit, but for the most part, like 60%, he did all right in here. Another thing that I mixed on, as much as I love Jenna Ortega, I wasn't the biggest fan of her character. She's just that angsty teenager that, sort of what we got with Lydia Dietz in the first, but this one's more egregious than it was in the first film. And I love Jenna Ortega. She's one of my favorite, like, modern actresses, but I will say towards the end, she started to grow on me, and her relationship between her and her mom grew even stronger, so I was a fan of that, and I was like, okay, good. She didn't need to be like that the entire time. And we're talking about subplots. I do like her subplot for the most part, with her and her little boyfriend. I thought that was pretty cool. It's a nice, unique twist. So with that being said, let's move on to the negatives with this movie. I think there's things in here that's really going to age this movie because the first felt timeless. There was no real sense of technology being used at all, except for like the practical effects and special effects. I'm talking about like on screen. We didn't really see any TVs or anything. We didn't see anything like that. But there's a scene involving phones, which I get it. It's commentary on people on their phones all the time and influencers, but I didn't really think that was needed in a Beetlejuice film. And that's sort of like one of my main problems with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Like there's a scene involving influencers and phones, and that one guy was like, move and do one thing and you're gonna be canceled. There's like humor like that in here as well, and just stuff that's gonna age it for me, that's really gonna drag it down for me. And then the character of Rory, which is like Winona Ryder's boyfriend / producer of her show. I hated him from the start. I do like the actor, he seems cool. I've seen him in interviews and he seems like a cool guy, but I hated his character, which I know he's meant to be like that. Sort of like, Wiles mixed with Jenna Ortega. They're meant to be like that, but damn, I really hated Rory in here. A lot of his humor just didn't really work for me either. Like, it was very, very bad, and there's this one scene where he's proposing at a funeral, and it was really hard for me to sit through. And then there's like musical numbers in here, which I was not a fan of either. Like the first is like very iconic for Deo. We all know that. The scene revolving around the Dietzes, that was great, but they try to copy that like 2 or 3 times in here. And not with the song, but just like the idea of a musical number in here. I just wasn't a fan of that. And then they sort of turned Beetlejuice into like Buzz Lightyear in Toy Story 3, where like he's getting into his backstory and he's speaking Italian, and I'm like, this just didn't really work. You didn't really need to do that. I love that they like made it this 1930s, 1940s like flashback, Hammer film or Universal Classics Monsters film for a minute there, but the commentary with the Italian, I know they're trying to pay homage, but if you have Michael Keaton as Batman, just let him do the voice, Now, I'm just going to go on a little rant really quickly because I hated that they weren't involved, but the Maitlands in here, portrayed by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis. I would have loved to have seen them return, even in my review of the first film. Even if it's for a quick scene, I would have loved that, but they referenced them twice in here. There's a line about them finding a loophole and they wanted to get out, but if you watch Beetlejuice, they didn't seem to want to get out at the end of the movie. Like, they were very, very, content with like being with the Dietzes, and they all got along with each other. So like I didn't buy that. And then there's like a cool little reference to them in the opening in here, sort of where it pays homage when it's the camera going through the miniature city. I thought that was great. But I would have loved to have seen them return, which I know a lot of people are probably going to bring that up, but I sort of knew to expect that because they were nowhere on the posters. And Gina Davis says she wasn't going to be in it. But, I mean, I sort of understand why Alec Baldwin's not in here, but I would have loved to have seen them regardless because they were, like, the unsung heroes of the first film, They were, like, one of the best parts of the first film. And then speaking of the opening, the first 10-15 minutes was a bit egregious for me, dude. Like, we get to see where the Dietzes are now, but I just wasn't a fan, It didn't really, like I told my wife last night, it didn't feel like, I don't want to sound like that guy, but it didn't feel like Beetlejuice, I don't know. But once we get to the house, things start to pick up. But it's just like that first 10-15 minutes was just a bit weird for me. And it's gonna throw a lot of people off, especially with people that's been waiting 36 years. That's one thing I'm curious about is like the people that, grew up with this movie, which I grew up with this movie too, but like when it came out, I would have loved to know their thoughts on this one. But yeah, that's basically all I have to say about Beetlejuice. So with that being said, I'm going to be giving this year's Beetlejuice an overall grade of a 57%. Last thing, I just want to say rest in peace to Bob. Bob is like the unsung hero of this movie. I loved him in here. One of the best parts of this movie, hands down. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed it a lot more than I did, because I've seen a lot of reviews praising this movie and saying it's one of the best Legacy sequels. I'm not with you on that one, okay? I just, like I told my wife last night, for everything that I love about this movie, there's something to hate about it as well. Like, I'm very mixed on it. I'm very torn on this movie, but maybe with a rewatch I'll like it more. But even then, I told her, I was like, if I take my mom to see it, I'm pretty sure she's not going to like it either. But either way, with that being said, I just want to say thank you as always for watching my videos, and hope to see you in the next one.